Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Qualls, you left the Treasury Department in 2006 and joined the Carlyle Group, a private equity firm, in 2007. After you left the administration, you publicly advocated to change the rules limiting private equity investment in banks. Is that correct?
That is correct, Senator.
Now, in September of 2008, the Federal Reserve announced a policy shift allowing for private equity firms to take larger ownership stakes in banks. In May of 2009, the Carlyle Group acquired, along with two other firms, $12.8 billion Bank United. Is that correct?
That is also correct.
As part of that deal, the FDIC agreed to cover most of the losses, and in total, the FDIC made $1.6 billion in payments, more than any other loss-sharing agreement during the financial crisis. Ultimately, Bank United failure cost the FDIC $5.7 billion, and the Carlyle Group and other private equity investors walked away with more than $2 billion. That sounds pretty much to me like IndyMac and One West. So it seems, Mr. Qualls, that you used your remaining influence in the administration to change the rules to make it easier for your new employer, a private equity titan, to turn America's struggling community and regional banks into cash cows. And in so doing, you gave little regard for the communities served by these banks. And I hope my colleagues are acutely aware of the consolidation of community banks, that they understand what we're talking about here. Mr. Qualls lobbied the government so that his employer could invest in deals where the FDIC would take on all the risk, the private equity investors would reap all the benefits, and the future of the community banks involved was merely an afterthought. And that worries me in the context of some of the comments that you and I discussed yesterday about your views on regulatory oversight, changes in that regulatory reform, changes in the Wall Street reform that came in the aftermath of the world's worst financial, or the nation's worst financial crisis, where we were told by Ben Bernanke we were going to have a global financial meltdown. And so I worry about that. Mr. Otting, I heard the answers you gave to Senator Tester and robo-signing, and I think, just like Secretary Mnuchin, I think there's a misstatement of the facts here, but I think Senator Tester did a good job on focusing on that. Let me ask you something else. Did One West engage in the practice of dual tracking, offering a struggling homeowner the hope of a modification while simultaneously pursuing a foreclosure?
Mr. Menendez, that was an industry practice.
I didn't ask you that. I asked you, did One West engage in it, yes or no?
The answer to that is yes. We did, and it was an industry practice that we discontinued once it was identified in the consent order as not to be an acceptable
Will you
practice.
commit to provide the total number of foreclosures and loan modifications completed in each of the states represented by members of this committee prior to the committee's vote on your nomination?
I do not have access to that data. It's owned by CIT Bank, and we could you can request that information from them, but I would not have any influence.
You don't have the wherewithal to ask them to provide that?
I do not.
Well,
ask, but I don't know if they would comply.
I understand that while you may not have direct access to the information, you certainly can be helpful in requesting CIT provide this information prior to the committee voting on your nomination. I hope you would do that.
Are you asking for me to request that information?
Yes.
I don't think that that's my position, Senator, to request that information.
Well, let me just say, New Jersey was particularly hard hit by the 2008 financial crisis, and it continues to have the highest foreclosure rate in the nation. So as long as homeowners in New Jersey continue to struggle with foreclosure, I'm not going to forget One West's practices and expect you'll take seriously my request for this information. And you're going to a position for which this information is critical. I can't understand nominees who must understand that based upon the positions they've been nominated to and positions they have taken in the past, that one doesn't come prepared to reconcile or try to reconcile those views. So I have a problem with that. Finally, Mr. Quarles, you and I spoke about a rules-based approach to monetary policy, and you told me you do support a rules-based approach to monetary policy. Do you accept the analysis that suggests that following a strict Taylor rule would undermine the Fed's ability to achieve its full employment mandate? And talk to me about the full employment mandate as part of your dual obligation. We talked a lot about the one side of that obligation. We didn't talk very much about the full employment side and your views on that.
Certainly, Senator. I think that the Taylor rule is merely one example of a rule, and is I'm not advocating the adoption of a Taylor rule to guide Fed policy. With respect to the employment mandate as part of the dual mandate that faces the Federal Reserve, I think that's an important element of the Federal Reserve's obligations. I would take it very seriously.
Thank you, Senator. That concludes the